Paul, you famously met Donald Trump. You interviewed him brilliantly there in the White House when he was president. You saw all the security levels. Does it surprise you listening to those eyewitness accounts, particularly the BBC one of the character who said he saw the guy up on the building, crawling up the building? It sounds like something out of a bad movie, and alerted the police and alerted the secret security, and nothing appeared to happen. This is all, as I say, just rumours and from the BBC interview, so we can't say whether it's how factual it is, but that he seemed to be a credible witness. What did you make of all that, Paul?
Well, it's amazing, isn't it, mate? Where you just, like, again, like the static bubble that is the White House, for obvious reasons, you're able to reinforce it, find new ways to reinforce it. But when you're out and about and as exposed as he was here, again, I just keep thinking back to, and I'm sure this footage will pop up in the next couple of days, but there's the footage of, remember when Barack Obama won the presidency in 2008 and he walked out into that park in Chicago and supposedly 1 million people were there. Well, when he spoke with a glass box around him. When Trump spoke at official events, again, as the president, he had sort of this glass box around him. Biden would do the same, but there's no such protection. Now, there's a certain level of automatic Secret Service protection because you're the president. Because you're a former president, there's automatic protection because you're a candidate. But whether the difference between being the sitting president and the aspirant president or the former president is that travelling bulletproof glass, we'll all wait and see. Marjorie Taylor Greene has been on television in the US saying that she's going to try, as of Monday in the US, to start to have a serious hearing into this conversation about were requests made and were requests denied. But that image that you're seeing right now, Donald Trump Jr. among many others, that's the image. That's the image that is going to be interpreted, and it's so maddening. And you were on the Trump train before almost anyone else in the country, and you know that since 2015 this guy has become this Rorschach test, and the people who don't like him lose their brain. And there were people today who were watching, and as I say, they had a different instinct to what happened than you and I did. Not because they were wishing ill, but just they thought this was the natural trajectory. People like Tucker Carlson, of course, have said that this was the only way things would stop. I know you mentioned that earlier in the program as well. But think about this period of time is that the 11th of July was when he was supposed to be sentenced and potentially off to jail in New York. That was put off because of the Supreme Court decision around presidential immunity. In the next couple of days, the Republican convention. Now, the Republican convention, supposedly the biggest and most interesting part of it was going to be who was going to be the vice president. J.D. Vance, the Ohio senator, one of the many on the short list. Well, now, of course, it's all about seeing Trump for the first time after a moment like this. So American politics, as we know, it really goes from sort of obsessing about one side to obsessing about another. And I've heard a lot of conversation on this morning, and rightly so on the program, about, well, what does it mean for the politics, all the rest of it? Well, you would hope that even people who hate Donald Trump rally to the humanity of what had happened here. I agree with James in particular about his reaction to the Biden statement, which I thought was pretty weak. It didn't have any sense of gravitas to it, and it seemed to be something that automatically he went back into his muscle memory, which was to say all those stupid things that you say about Trump as a way of trying to scare people into bringing out the vote. But of course, going into all of this, Trump was more popular in the polls. You've got to imagine that a rallying effect of Americans comes to his aid. But that image, that idea that if you, I, or anybody else, or in fact, 99% of everyone watching right now, that something like that had happened, your adrenaline would send you into some sort of confusion and a slight cower. The idea that his adrenaline turned into fight, 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 and literally he's resisting the moves of the Secret Service. It gives you an idea about that internal fight the man has, something that's obvious whether you calmly talk to him at the White House or whether we see it in potential tragedy today, or we see it in a courtroom, or we see it anywhere. I just think the internal spirit of this bloke is so obvious. And, while there'll be people watching our conversation trying to misinterpret it about what does it mean politically, the reality is that everything at this time in the cycle becomes political and becomes interpreted as political. It was fascinating to see how, again, if these sorts of things had happened to a different political figure, some figures in the media would be much more dramatic or mournful in their language, but because it's Trump, they're going to take a couple of hours to get to that.
Well, Paul, I'm only half joking, but maybe Joe Biden's statement was a bit weak because he was still trying to figure out who'd been shot. But anyway, as I say, great to chat to you, Paul Murray. Thanks so much for coming here on Outsiders.